You can see here we're also working on this other issue here where somebody in their car, I guess the front end of the car went over the curb here a little bit too much and it just barely poked into the wall. So we've already cut out a nice square piece and we're going to repair this piece here as well. Also here, just our luck, you see this right here, that's a pipe right at the bottom there. So what we're going to do then here, so we don't cause any issues here, is we're going to enlarge this hole to bring it even further, closer to the floor. Not a whole lot, but just enough that we can get some wood behind it and get some meat that we can screw into the wood without hitting that pipe there. So you have to be really careful when you're dealing with stuff like this. Whenever you cut close to the floor, you're often likely to find pipes that are within, in this case here, it looks like to be about 6 inches off the floor. Alright, so I want to show you now an improved method for repairing this drywall when you have a hole this close to the floor. So you remember a minute ago we had the drywall was cut to right here by the pipe and we decided to cut it lower to allow some space in here. So normally I would, we'll cut the wood of course, but normally I would stick my piece of scrap wood right in here and nail to it so that we could attach the drywall right there. But the problem with this, if you do it that way, is now how are you going to feather down that last inch or so with the drywall mud and the tape and everything? So that's going to be pretty hard. So what I propose that we do is we take our Sonocrafter here, right, and we cut the baseboard on either side of the hole. So there's no more baseboard here for a second, and then we slice through the rest of the drywall, and then when we cut our drywall piece it will take up this whole area right here and there won't even be a seam at the bottom. I think that's the best way to handle this situation here. And then when we're done we put the baseboard piece back and you just get a little wood putty and smooth out either side, and we're going to paint the baseboards anyway. So you'll never even know that this repair was ever done. Alright, so this is a much more desirable position to be in. So now all we have to do is cut the square piece here, and it will just screw in perfectly at the bottom there. There won't be any mudding and taping that we need to do at the bottom there. Okay, so what I'm doing here now is I'm building this wood frame around it. You screw it into the front there, into the drywall, and it gives you a solid surface to screw the drywall onto. So you just screw them in like this on the outside. And then when we're done, and this is all solid here, see these are rock solid here, you put the drywall on here and you run your screws right into the wood there, and that's what holds it nice and flat against it. Before we close up the wall, I always mark everything up. So right here I've marked the top of the stud so we know where that is. And down on the floor there we've marked right there with 2 lines where the bottom of the stud is. I mark where the pipe is because we want to make sure we don't get any screws that go through that pipe there, see. So I always mark where the pipe is. And then I've marked on the left side there on the drywall where the bottom plate is. So as long as I'm within 3 inches of the bottom there, I'll hit metal. I prefer to hit the wood. It's a lot easier to screw into the wood than the metal there. So I'm going to shoot for about 1 inch off the floor to run my screws there across the bottom. I don't anticipate going any across the middle. I might. We'll see how sturdy the drywall piece looks when it's in there. Okay, so what I'm using here, this is an awesome bit that DeWalt makes. It's called a drywall setting bit here. And what this does is you put your drywall screw on there and it pushes it into the drywall just the exact textbook perfect distance, just slightly breaking the paper without going all the way in and damaging the drywall. These are great little bits to have here. So I just put it right in there. And you take your drywall screw and put it right on there and screw it right into the wall. And by the way, I did a whole video about these. I'll put a link to it down in the description for you. Here we go. See how it just sets it in at the perfect depth? See how the screw just barely breaks the paper? That's how you want it to be. You want your screws to be just below the surface. You don't ever want them sticking up above the surface, and you don't want it poking through to the point that you can see the actual gypsum drywall, the inner core of the drywall past the paper. That's exactly how every drywall screw should look when you run it into the wall. Every single one of these is perfect. See that? Textbook perfect. You'll never make a mistake. It's foolproof. Okay, so I've got all the screws in there that I think we need. We went better than 6 inches all the way around, except for like down here, but there's no other wood there. This is fine, everything's in there nice and tight. And we purposely got a little sloppy with the cut to show you what happens. See how these gaps are here? So this is the reason why I don't normally cut my drywall like this. So most of the DIYers will cut it like this. There's nothing wrong with doing it this method. But you can see how sometimes you'll be left with gaps. What I normally do is I'll take my piece of drywall here, my cut piece, and then I'll trace it around it onto the regular wall here, and then I'll cut along those traced lines. That gives you a 100% perfect, accurate cut. There wouldn't be any of these gaps. It would be just nice and tight like you see right here. It would be like this all the way around. So that's the better way to cut your drywall. So I've got probably over a dozen of these strategically placed in every single one of my drill bit cases. Even if there's no spot for it, it just lies in there rolling around, flopping around, I don't care, because it's so important to have one of these. And wherever I have a case, I make sure I have one of these in there, because these are very handy to have, and you never know when you're going to need it. And the need comes up quite a bit. We're always digging into drywall and making repairs like that, so it's always great to have one of these around. Okay, now we have our mesh tape in place. And now we are ready to start mudding up. Well, here you can see we finally got it patched. There's the first layer right there of the drywall mud. So once that dries up, we'll come in and we'll scrape down the peaks on there, and we'll sand it down a little bit around the edge there. And we'll put on layer number 2 and cover everything up there and feather it out a little further. We'll probably switch to our 9-inch knife next. The third layer that we'll put on after that one, we'll probably switch to the 12-inch knife, and by the time we're done, we should be out about 36 inches from the main repair there. And we took this opportunity, you'll see the spots all over the wall there where we filled in old nail holes and old screw holes and stuff like that, and old drywall anchors. So this is all going to get sanded down, and then we'll prime and paint this wall when we're done. Alright, so now we're halfway through putting on the second layer here. We're just trying to glob a whole lot in. We have to fill in some of the sunken part in the middle there. So you're right in this area here. Switch to the little guy here, 6-inch knife, to kind of fill in these globbed areas here. There we go. Really like working with this 20-minute mud. It's just nice and smooth. Alright, so now you can see here that I've completed the second layer here, and we're going to let this dry. And it's evening out even further now, and I've also feathered it out further all the way around. So if you remember, the original repair was right in this spot right here. It kind of goes right here and goes down. You can see where there's still the green tape there at the bottom that will get covered by the baseboard. But you can see how far out I've already feathered. It's going to be at least 12 inches here. And by the time I come tomorrow with the big taping knife again and go all the way around, we'll feather it out even further out and stretch it out and do another skim coat across the top here. And that will make it just perfectly flat. And that's what you have to do to make it believable. Too many people make the mistake of just globbing a bunch of mud around where the wound is, you know, and where the seams are, and call it a day. But you really have to take your time and do it right and spread it all the way out here to make it work. All right, so we've come in the next day. I had to let it dry overnight because it's pretty hot and humid out. In fact, you can still see a little bit of that it's not completely white in some areas here. So anyway, we're going to sand this down here and feather out even further and flatten this going across here some more as well. Okay, so I'm just going to take some more mud here and run it right across. Okay, so we've let the third layer here dry overnight. Now you can see it's really looking gorgeous. We've spread it out and feathered it out nicely. So now I'm just going to sand this down a little bit just to get some of my high marks out here, some of these taping knife marks here. And then I usually like to go real good around the perimeter here. And what I like to do is sand it down so that it looks nice and fluffy like a cloud. You can sort of see it looking like that now. We're just going to improve upon that a little bit. I don't like to leave any defined lines at all where you can see where there was any type of mud there. You should never have that. And that I think is the biggest mistake that most people make, is they just leave a defined line. And you don't want to see any of these little flaky bubble openings here where you didn't have coverage. You want to sand all of that down nice, and it should look like a cloud, okay, nice and diffused all the way around the edge. To brad nail in my little baseboard piece that I removed earlier. I'm going to nail the other ones in on either side of it too, just to make sure they're all up against the wall at the same depth. Cover me, I'm going in. And when I do my nail, I like to shoot my brad nails not straight in like everybody else does. I like to shoot them in at a 45-degree angle downward. That way it makes it harder for anybody to pull the baseboard out later. I see everybody just shoots them straight in. And that's why a lot of times you'll see loose baseboards. So here we go. When I'm doing patches like this and I want it nice and smooth and filling good wood cracks, I don't use wood putty. I hate wood putty. Most of them are lousy and they just crumble apart. I like to use Bondo because it dries nice and hard and smooth. Mix up some Bondo here. And I'll put a link to this down in the description for you so you can go check it out for yourself. This one dries in 15 minutes. Now, the recipe here, of course, calls for a 3-inch wide circle, about a half-inch tall. But I'm not going to use that much. I don't need that much. I'm just making a small batch. So I'm making 1/2 of a recipe. So that's how much I'm using there. And then instead of using a 3-inch bead of the hardener, I'm just going to use a 1.5 inch, so I'm going half the recipe here. And you do need to work fast with this, so watch this. You stir it up in until it starts to get nice and blue. It should take almost a minute of stirring it up and kneading it in and all that stuff there. For it should be one good solid light blue color. And you got to work fast because even though it says it will dry in 3 to 5 minutes, that's a joke. It actually will set up in 2 minutes. Okay, so now I'm going to take some here and put it in spot number 1 here. You want it on thick enough to cover the crack, but not thick enough that you're going to have to be doing a boatload of sanding the next day. Some of this will scrape off. Oh, by the way, this stuff works really fast, so you can sand within 15 minutes. So I'm just going to try and follow the profile there as best as I can. So theoretically, we'll be sanding this down in 15 minutes. I'm going to take this and do the other crack over here. You got to work real fast because this will set up in no time. Anytime you're dealing with something that's a fast setting product, you'll find that it doesn't last as long as the manufacturer's instructions tell you. They'll often dry up a lot quicker than what the bag says they will. Okay, so we've sanded down the Bondo and we're ready to paint this now. I decided to wait overnight and come in the next day and do it just because you have a lot more light. I didn't want to work at night doing that. See how we've transformed it here, and even as we zoom into the wall, you'll have a hard time finding where it was that the hole was originally located there on that wall, because we sanded it in so nice there. Yeah, so while we were at it, we primed and painted the whole wall all the way around here and did all behind the water heater and the AC unit there and the door and the wall here. So actually it looks like they have a brand new garage now. Well, here we are. We got it all pretty much put back together, and the baseboards have been painted and caulked. This wall now looks perfect, textbook perfect. It looks better than it did when we started, and if you recall what we started off with, we had that big hole that was centered right here on the wall from when that old Oldsmobile 442 had accidentally run into it when they were parking in here several years back. And so we were finally able to get this patched up for them, and you can't even tell. And remember, the key to success here, folks, is you keep feathering out further and you sand it down smooth so that you can't see any of the edges. It should look like a cloud when you're done. So that way when you come by and prime and paint, you can't even tell where it was done. So we hope you found this video useful, and if you did, please give us a thumbs up down below. Just smash that like button. That lets us know that you like us, and it also helps YouTube decide to rank us better as well. And if you want to up your game with home remodeling and home repairs, make sure you go ahead and click that subscribe button down below, because you'll learn a lot here at this channel here. And make sure you click that little bell icon when you click on the subscribe button. That way you'll be notified every single time we upload a new video. And that's where we're going to leave it here, folks, and thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.